Welcome to today's session. We're going to be meditating on dealing with criticism or a bruised ego. I thought this fit nicely. I have talked about ego before, so you can look at the previous videos on here to hear more about ego. But I thought it followed nicely on from anger, because we often get angry when people criticize us. And so this is, yesterday we dealt with anger, and then today dealing with a bruised ego, basically. So we're going to need, I'm going to ask you to think about a situation in which you were criticized, and it's more helpful if it's something that you were angry, that really upset you, how you were criticized, or somebody gave you some feedback you didn't like and didn't handle very well. If you can't think of anything, then, a time that anybody gave you feedback. So just give you some time to think about that. And while we do that, why don't we warm the body up? So rolling the head. And the other way. And if you don't like the exercises that I do, then you can find your own way. But it's just about, moving the body a little bit so that we can get it into a place of stillness. Twisting from side to side. And maybe moving the legs back and forth. So I've been fortunate enough in my previous career, when I was a group therapist, all of the sessions were recorded. And from time to time, the managers watched them. Or, sometimes in my first ever job, because it was new to me, my manager would watch it with me, which was like a harrowing experience. It's actually, I get some of the flashbacks doing this live because I see how much I fidget, like, playing with my hair and stuff like that. I haven't changed in, 14 years, I guess. But it was really hard to sit and to listen to myself and then to criticize myself, but also to have somebody give me feedback on what I could do better. So this is something that I've been dealing with for a long, long time, and I've finally gotten used to it. And now I welcome feedback, even if it's not said nicely. I'm just so used to getting feedback now that it's okay. But I'm just saying that because, it takes a really long time to get used to this process, because we all have an ego of some kind, and it hurts. It's damaging the ego when we hear criticism or negative feedback, something we didn't do well. And so that's the only thing that's destroying it, is the ego, because there's always another side to it, and that side is somebody wants you to improve. They want you to see what you're doing, so that maybe you're causing, harm to other people, or saying something that you don't realize in a way that comes across in a way that you don't mean, and therefore people might be a little bit like, okay, no thank you. Okay, so as I was saying, criticism is all about the ego. So the stronger we harm the ego, the better, the more quickly it's destroyed. So that's basically the point. In order to show compassion for other people, we need to have quite a low ego, because otherwise we're the best, we're the only people that matter. We don't need to be kind to other people, because who's kind to us? I've had such a hard life, so, therefore others need to have a hard life. Those kind of things, if we have a big ego. I'm just going to give a quote from Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And this is his advice for situations where one's ego gets bruised. When one's ego is harmed, one should rejoice. How great it is! How wonderful it is! In the same way as ordinary people react when their enemy is harmed or when some trouble happens to them, one should rejoice and feel so happy when one's ego is hurt. Exactly like that, one should think, how fantastic it is for this ego to be harmed. And what really sat with me in that quote is that the amount of times, and I still do it, even though I try not to, but it's really hard, when something bad happens to someone we don't like, or who's caused harm to us or somebody we love, and then something bad happens and it's like, yes, that's karma, and now that's what I say, oh yes, that's karma. It's not like, oh, that's their karma they're working through, good for them. It's like, yes, they were hurt, and so that's how we should feel about when our ego gets bruised. It's like our ego is our enemy. Our ego is stopping us from doing all of these great, wonderful things. Our ego is stopping us from being happy. Our ego is stopping us from letting people get close to us. Our ego is stopping us from trusting people. Our ego is stopping us from growing. So our ego is that enemy that we think about, and it's a separate part to us, because we're not just our ego, and the ego gets bigger and it gets smaller and it fluctuates through life. And I guess the goal that certainly in Buddhist tradition is that we rid of the ego, because without ridding the ego, we can't become enlightened. So that's what we want to focus on today, is getting rid of this feeling, or welcoming the criticism, because we know that it's going to be our teacher, and that's what it is. The enemies are our teacher in the Buddhist philosophy, and now the enemy is our ego. So criticism can often feel as though we're getting a bad reputation, which is unpleasant. We don't like a bad reputation. For example, watching a video, getting feedback from a video of a group session, it's like, oh God, now they think I'm a terrible therapist, and luckily I had really good managers who were very good at balancing the positive feedback with the negative feedback. But that's a Western thing. Actually, we don't need the positive feedback. It's I'm confident in what I do. They're still hiring me. I don't need to be given this, oh wow, what you've done is so great. Because do you know what it does? Raises the pride, makes the ego better. So we want to work on destroying the ego, not building it up. And I guess it's only in Western society where we have this thing where you need to be so focused on this praise, and I'm so proud of you for doing that, or you should be proud of yourself. And actually it's not really about that. It's I've done well, and that's good, and I helped people, and it's not I'm better than this person, or I got a better score than this. It's not even about, we used to get scored, which is just horrendous, but it's not even about I got a better score than the last time. I used to just not care about my score anymore, because really, what does it matter? It's I'm either helping people or getting feedback on how to do so in a better way. So remembering that the ego is creating this reality. It's the ego that's harmed. It's, I've sat in group sessions because I did it with another person. So I was with somebody who, and the manager sees both of us together because it's also about group dynamics. And so I've been in a session where somebody has received this criticism as criticism and not like helpful, positive feedback, and they've gone off the handle. And I've probably received the same feedback, if not that session before, and I'm like, okay, thank you, fair point, because it's about the where people's ego levels are at, and it's about the ego being damaged. My ego in this situation is a bit lower because I was doing it for 8 years. So hearing this weekly for 8 years, I can either become this crumbling mess or become this really egotistical, arrogant, narcissistic person, or leave, because it's too damaging. But I chose to see it as a way to improve myself so that I could continue helping other people. So I created that reality. My colleague created, the one that got angry about the feedback, created his own reality. He let his ego form a reality. I let my humbleness form my reality. Okay, so and I'm not comparing myself, saying I'm better than him. I'm just giving examples of how that works, because in the beginning of my career, I was that person who was angry and damaged. My ego was so damaged that I'd receive this criticism. So it's all about what we choose. We allow others' opinions and words to upset us. The ego does that. We do that. Their words aren't upsetting us. Most of the time when people do give us criticism or negative feedback, it's to help us, and they may not be that skilled in telling us, but generally if we deal through all the muck, the intention is there that they want to help us or to give us, better feedback. Actually, just one last example before we get into the meditation. A friend, I had done a promotion for my yoga and meditation services, and I had a yoga teacher who friend of mine who said that she watched my video and wasn't going to say something, but it came up in her feed again, and it just really didn't put me in a positive light. And she said if she watched that video, she would never take a yoga class from me, but she knows that's not who I am. And so she gave me some feedback. And actually, the way she presented it, I was a little bit like, okay, where's she going with this? But then when she gave me the feedback, I was like, oh yeah, I was kind of thinking that when I did the video, but I was a bit lazy and just published it without giving it really much thought. So I welcomed that criticism, you know, and of course, like whenever we hear something we don't want of how we're not good or done something wrong, we're gonna like, oh, don't like it, but you know, work through that. I was like, okay, I'll hear what she has to say, and I was like, oh, good point, you know, and so I guess if you need an example, you can do something like that where you did take the feedback, but it was like in the beginning, it was a bit like, oh my God, like, you know, God, where is this going? Am I gonna be looking bad? And maybe you do. That's okay. It's the ego. So let's calm the ego and get through this and just, you know, work on becoming humble and realize that other people suffer from getting feedback as well. And we can use that by improving the way that we speak to other people. So get into your meditation stance, either closing the eyes or finding a soft gaze. Walking or sailing to your open space where there's no other distractions, no other people. It's the time for you to think outside of the box, to think in a different way with no judgment, no distractions. Grounding yourself in this space, thinking of the sounds around. Thinking of the smells, the temperature, the weather is like. And as you start to come into your space, I'll recite the 4 measurables so that we can generate compassion and happiness to all beings. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be dissociated from the supreme happiness which is without suffering. May they remain in boundless equanimity, free from attachment to close ones and rejection of others. Breathing in a white light of compassion for other people, compassion for ourselves, understanding. Exhaling out any unpleasant feelings, disturbing thoughts, perhaps some memories or thoughts that are bouncing around in the head. Acknowledging them and telling them we can come back to them later when we're ready. Or perhaps they're not even necessary at all. Inhaling a white light of peace, of happiness, of calm. Exhaling out any disturbing thoughts, unpleasantness. Really focusing on lengthening the breath. So as we inhale, the stomach expands more, the air comes all the way up so the shoulders raise. Exhaling out all the air through the nose so that the belly comes towards the spine, making sure that we're exhaling completely, so maybe even pausing at the bottom. Creating spaciousness within the body, within the mind, allowing ourselves to sit gently and peacefully within the space that we're creating in our minds. With a calm, open, and non-judgmental mind, bringing attention to a situation where you were criticized. Either a situation that you dealt with well or not so well, it doesn't matter. And in this calm manner, what are the benefits of this criticism, of this negative feedback? And it may be difficult to find some benefits, so I'm going to list them off. And actually, if you have any ideas that I haven't thought of, I'd really appreciate if you'd write them in the comments box after the meditation is over. So the benefits of receiving criticism or having the ego bruised is, as I said earlier, it destroys the ego. It makes you encounter problems and allows others to abuse you. That's what the ego does. And if you think about it, you are criticizing you, not them. The example of my friend, she was helping me. It is your passion, so advertise it as your passion. Ego allows you to be abused. Let's get rid of that ego. That's unhelpful. Another benefit is that it helps bring mistakes you've made to the surface so you can perhaps rectify them, learn from them, help others who maybe make the same mistakes. It helps with self-improvement, either within a job or within just a goal of being, not just a goal, but a goal of being kind and helpful to other people. And if we receive feedback or criticism with an open mind, with a non-judgmental mind, we'll learn new ideas. Specifically thinking of the situation that you were in, what were the benefits of receiving that criticism? Did it actually harm you to receive the criticism? Did it harm the ego, which is something that we want, as long as we can strike at the ego to make it smaller and not bigger? If it was really upsetting criticism, who gave it? Somebody we'll see again? If not, then what does it matter? Or perhaps thinking of the motive for their giving this criticism. The person might actually care. In that case, you can take it as a teaching tool. If it was somebody who is trying to harm you, then dismiss it. Or possibly not, because even if people are trying to harm us, there could be some good in what they're saying, a lesson in there. Instead of dismissing it, learn from it. Removing the ego from this situation, did they have a point? If yes, change it. If no, at least you considered it and there's nothing at this point that you need to change, but maybe it will come in handy. And if the ego is taking over and the mind is wondering about how this person wronged us, placing the ego behind, calming it, and coming from a different viewpoint. Again, did it actually harm us? What was the learning lesson in receiving this criticism. There always is a lesson. Even if it's exploring the criticism with an open mind, if it's something that we feel like, nope, this wasn't true, it didn't work for us, at least we thought in a different way, in a more analytical, rational way. And finally, as the advice from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, rejoice in this criticism. Rejoice in the destruction of this enemy that is the ego, that lives in each and every single one of us. Make it a resolve to get control of this ego, allowing it to stop abusing us. Taking out our rucksack and placing this exercise into the rucksack. So instead of becoming angry and dwelling on the injustice of any criticism we may have received, sitting back and exploring this exercise. I think we've only done it for, maybe 4 minutes, 5 minutes. You can do this with time, it will become much quicker. So actually hold on a minute when I'm speaking from experience. As I said to you, my friend that gave it to me, first of all, I was like, oh, it's getting a bit close, don't tell me, I've done something wrong. But actually, sit back. What are the benefits of hearing this criticism? In that situation, hopefully I'm going to get more clients, more students, improve my business model. And if you don't see any benefits in it, well, did it actually harm us? We can learn from anybody. Sometimes the greatest lessons that we learn are from our enemies. In this case, the ego is the enemy. Placing the rucksack on our backs. And with our heads held high, the shoulders relaxed. Ready to face reality with compassion, peace, and calmness. Entering whatever reality that is in front of us. And as we're visualizing what's around us, gently opening the eyes and coming into the reality. Becoming aware of the room, the sounds that are around us. Moving the body a little bit. Dedicating this practice to somebody who has bruised your ego and thanking them for the opportunity to see things in a different way, to explore something in a way that perhaps is different. And remembering that hearing criticism or feedback isn't always that easy. So perhaps if we're in a position where we are going to give somebody some feedback today, that we do so in a kind, compassionate way. And as long as we do it in that way, it's their journey if they don't accept it in a nice way. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.